Okay, guys. So today we're going to talk about synchronous and asynchronous Apex, and we will see what are the different ways of running a code synchronously versus asynchronously. Okay, so the first important thing is, let me open it up. So, do anybody know what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous?
Yes, synchronous happens at at the time that's like, for example, when there's a transaction, it's synchronous, it happens now, while asynchronous, the timing is uncanny and it happens based on Salesforce schedule.
Yeah. So basically, you have two ways of running code. One is synchronously, and like for example, we have triggers, right? So, or even if you write code in the anonymous window, all of these are synchronous ways where you basically they will happen, and whatever time they are taking, you will have to wait for them to finish in order to go to the next stuff. Okay, so synchronous means everything happens in the same exact thread. Whereas asynchronous is a separate process will start in the background and they can finish whenever they want or based on the resources available, and then but you can continue with your main processes. Okay, so in the case of asynchronous, if you look at the logs also, you will see another process being kicked off. And there are different ways of running the code asynchronously. Do you guys know what are the different ways of running the Apex code asynchronously? What are the different ways of doing that?
Queueable is one of them.
Very good.
Batchable, if I'm not mistaken.
Batch Apex, correct.
Um,
And
and there is one more.
future method.
Yeah, future method. Sorry.
Okay. So these are basically three ways. Whenever you are using or implementing a queuable interface, or you are using this future annotation, or you are implementing the batchable interface, these are the ways of telling Salesforce that, hey, run this code in the asynchronous mode. Okay, so what happens is one of the benefit. Okay, what is the benefit of running something asynchronously versus synchronously? What is the benefit do you get? Why don't you do everything synchronously?
Government basically it's like a fire and forget.
Hmm.
So you want to do some job on the background while but you don't want to just wait for the answer.
Exactly, exactly. Very good. Anybody else have any other question, any answers besides that?
The governor limits are higher.
Very good, very good. So, one of the benefit is when you run something asynchronously, there can be operation that can take a longer time. So, when you run something asynchronously, you can pretty much kick off this fire and forget mechanism, and that process is happening in the background, and then you can continue it. The user doesn't have to wait and sit on the browser waiting on the answer. And another important thing is when you are talking about governor limits, the governor limits are higher in the case of asynchronous Apex versus synchronous. So when you run something asynchronously, the governor limits are higher when you run something synchronously. Okay. Now, what is the difference between future and queuable? Why would you do a future, or when will you do a future versus queuable? Anybody know the answer to this question? This is a very common interview question. What is the difference between future and queuable?
So when, if I'm not mistaken, for queuable, so you have like a few records, you want to queue them and send it at one time. While for future method, you'll wait for the answer and then update the record, something like that.
No. No, so both of them are basically to run the Apex code asynchronously. When you future methods are usually called to make some call out. Okay, when you have to call another system, call an external system, that is when you will use a future call out. Okay, and then another thing is the chaining of the jobs is not allowed in the future. When I say chaining, for example, you want to update certain records, then you want to after once those records are processed, you want to send an email. Now this is one job, this is another job. Now the chaining of this job, okay, run job 2 after job 1, the chaining can only happen in Queueable, it doesn't happen in the future. Another is to the future method, you can only pass primitive data type. When I say primitive data type, I mean it could be an ID, it could be a string, it could be a Boolean, but I cannot pass account or I cannot pass list of account. These are not primitive data types. Only primitive data types, the simpler one, you can pass in the future method, whereas in Queueable, you can pass in list of accounts, list of opportunities, all of that, you can do it. Okay. So that is the main difference. The chaining is not allowed, and as well as if you have a complex operation, then when you have a simple call out, you can use a future. But future is an older way of doing things. More now, Salesforce is promoting Queueable. Okay, so try to use Queueable because it gives you much more better options. Job chaining accepts different types of data types, all of that. Now, what is a batch apex? And when will you use batch apex?
Um, to me, batch apex is a similar way of like a collection. So we want to just do all in batches. Like we have like 2,000 records and we want to do in like 10 of 200 batches, something like that.
Yeah, so something, yeah, so batch apex usually, let's say you have 50,000 records or 50,000 plus records in your org. Okay, and all of those 50,000 records you have to update. Okay. Now, when you are doing one of the way is you can say, hey, I can write a select statement and update the account. Okay, it will fail because you cannot retrieve through the SOQL queries more than 50,000 records. Okay, so you will run into governor limits. So what happens is when you have large sets of data, now when you have large sets of data and you want to update something or change something on all those records, or in a if you want to change it on bulk based on some business logic, then you can use something called as batch apex. So what happens is behind the scene, it will split those records into batches and you can set up the batch size. Okay, you can say, hey, each batch size can have 2000 records. You can set it up. So what will it do? It will basically create 25 batches and each batch will have about 2000 records and it will process and they will process in its own thread, okay, in its own way in the background. Now they don't know what you processed here and what you processed here. You by default they won't know how many records got processed here, how many records got processed here. So in order to remember the state, you can also implement an interface called stateful. That way it will remember the state of your transaction. Okay, what happened in this batch versus what happened in this batch. Once we will do examples, things will get more clear. But batch apex is mostly used when you have to update large sets of data. Now you can come up with a question saying, hey, why can't we use data loader in that case? See, data loader is a very fixed system, right? It's a very fixed tool. And you have to first load the data in the CSV file and then use the data loader. But let's say based on that record itself, you want to do some computation, you want to do some business logic, and then based on the current field values, you want to set another value for that. If you want to run some logic, data loader doesn't do that. So 99.9% of the time, Batch Apex is used to update large sets of data. Okay? Any questions on all three methods that we discussed? We have a future method, we have a queueable apex, and then we have is the uh, batch apex. Any questions before I move on?
Yeah, when it comes to okay, I know when we use batch apex, but when it comes to use future method versus uh, queueable, what are the criterias that to
Okay.
use one?
See, as I mentioned to you, future method usually is to make a simple callouts. Okay, when I say callout means you're calling another system, you're making a callout that usually future method is being used. To the future method, you can pass in just something like an ID. You cannot pass in anything other than you can pass in, I believe, list of IDs, but that's all to the future method. So when you have to do complex operations, and when you have to do, as I mentioned, right, process the records, send an email, and then let's say there's another job that you want to do. When you have to do one job after the other, those are the scenarios where you will use queueable. Future is for a simple call out that you want to do. Other than that, you will go over to a more better approach, which is queueable.
Gotcha. And when we deal with a lot different transactions at a time, it's recommended to use queueable. Is that correct to say?
Come back again. What is the question?
So soon we have an integration, right? And we want to send out different transactions, different records at the same time. That's the point that we use queueable rather than sending all at the same time. Is that correct to say? Like, for example, when we have a few records to be sent out, we can use synchronous. Well, we use queueable when
But
we
then
have.
you use, when you have those kind of things, then you will use something called as bulk API. When you have large sets of data that you wanted to send, then the better approach is bulk API. If you're talking about a large sets of data that you want to update, when we are dealing with integration, you will learn a little bit about how bulk API works.
Okay.
So that is something you can use when you are when you have large number of data that you want to update in a single call, then you can use bulk API in those cases. I never saw the like when you have less records versus more. No. Future usually is for callouts, and queueable is for everywhere you will use queueable. Very few places now, because Apex is also promoting queueable. So they want everything to be queueable than future method because it gives you a lot of other advantages.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Okay.
So Deepika, I have a question. So when you refer the queueable means they are like order of execution, or what exactly queueable is. And the second question was, when you see you say that a batch is only used for the update.
Mhm.
Can we use the batch for the DMLA like
Oh,
process
any
like
kind of
insert?
DML, any
Okay,
DML. Yeah.
DML. Okay.
Yeah, you can insert and all that. Your first question, Queueable is basically a name that they have used. It's an interface that they use, and when you implement that interface, your code runs in an asynchronous mode. That is what Queueable is. It's a basically they have this interface. If your class implements, that means that class will run in the asynchronous mode. Remember, if you have to annotate something with future, then it is using future way of running the code asynchronously. When you implement the queueable, then you are running it in the queueable manner. And when you implement database.batchable, then you're doing is batch apex. Is that what your question was? Or did I not understood the question?
No, I was asking what exactly queueable depends on. Like what exactly, why is holding it, why does it, there's a wait in a queueable, why there is not immediate action when we,
Because okay, that is how Apex is written. When you use these kind of like when you use, for example, if you remember, in order for something to be called by Apex from a flow, you have to mark it as invocable, right? So that is the rule. Similarly, if you want to run something asynchronously behind the scene, there are three ways of doing it. One is through future method. Second one is through Queueable by implementing the Queueable interface. And third is by implementing batch. This is defined by Apex that if you want to run your code in the asynchronous modes, and I told you why will you run in asynchronous mode. The reason you will run in asynchronous mode is, first of all, the user doesn't have to wait for that long running operation to finish in order to proceed to the next thing. Otherwise, you'll be just waiting on the browser and waiting for something to happen. That's why you let these processes run asynchronously so that you can continue with the rest of the work and the user doesn't get the feeling that he's waiting for something to happen. And those background processes will run on its own time. And it doesn't mean that something will happen after 10 minutes. Asynchronous is also within a difference of milliseconds. It's just that you from a blink of an eye, you might not see that of a difference, but it's not a huge time lag between synchronous versus asynchronous. It is just the way it is running. It is not running in the same transaction. It's in the same thread.
So means that queuable is like you putting the job in a queue, or
Yes.
maybe in a line or waiting list, like
Yeah,
sort
in
of
a
thing, right?
queue. And then once that job is ready to be processed, it will process it.
So that job is a self-driven or is driven by the trigger or is
No,
just
that
self
job will run on its own whenever
on
it
its own.
has the resources. All
It's
you do is
available.
you're enqueuing that job. You use system.enqueue job, and basically you whatever the thing that you want to execute, you put it into that job, and that job will you enqueue that job means you put it in the queue, and that job will execute.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And you can track if a job failed if through Salesforce Apex jobs. Okay. So now let's just revise what we did and then we will do some examples. Okay. So here is our asynchronous Apex, and let me also do a login. Okay. So over here, okay. So what is asynchronous Apex? Synchronous means it happens right now. User clicks a button, Apex will run, and user will wait until everything is done. Okay. One transaction, one log, one user request. So if you look at the logs also, you will see that there's only one log that gets generated. Whereas when you run something asynchronously, you will see multiple logs getting generated and different processes getting kicked off behind the scene. It is good for quick operations if you want to do a simple DML statement, just updating few records, small kind of calculations. Then in those cases, you will use synchronous. Asynchronous is basically running it in the background. User clicked something, okay, then what happens is those work will run in the background. User is not waiting for that job to finish. Salesforce picks up that jobs and runs it when it resources are available. So whenever it can find the resources to run the job, it will basically run that particular job. Okay. So that is what asynchronous is. Now here Now, why Salesforce gives us asynchronous? So Salesforce gives us asynchronous is because when you have something that takes long running work, like if you are processing thousands of records, or if you have a call out that is pretty complex, then those will take some time. If you have to do integrations, HTTP callouts, heavy calculations, to bypass the synchronous transaction limits, asynchronous, as I mentioned, has higher limits. So when you have to do any of that, then you will want the code to run in the asynchronous mode. Now, I will give you a demo where I'll show you how the logs are different when you run something synchronously versus asynchronously. So this is your class async demo service. So I'm going to go ahead here, developer console.
So, Deepika, I have one question. So, remember we were building a flow, and there was one option run asynchronously when we are using the to record trigger flow. Is this the same?
What was the option? What was the option? Run the trigger.
The run record trigger flow with the run asynchronously. There was an option in the flow record trigger flow.
Yes, it will be wherever you see asynchronously means it will happen in the background.
Okay.
Okay. So now here you have a method. Okay. And that is the synced method. It is there. So let's look at what it is doing. So this is your synchronous way, and then we will do similar thing through asynchronous. Okay. So inside of this method, first thing is we just have a simple debug statement called sync start. Then we are retrieving the accounts. Okay. And we are retrieving about 50 account records. Then what it is doing, we have is another debug statement, and it is printing the accounts.size. So what does it print? It will print 50 here. Okay. Then we are iterating over all these accounts one by one. So we are iterating over all the accounts here. And then you are basically putting account dot of name plus you're just adding this text called as processed sync. That is all you're doing. And then you are updating those records back into the database, and then you have a simple debug statement. So this is my existing accounts that looks like. Okay, so these are all the accounts that I have. I have total of, if you want to query, you can query these accounts, and the query would be select ID from this, and you will see you have about 52 records are there. And this is the name of these records. Now, after I run this code, the name will be appended with something called as processed sync. Okay, so here what will I do? I'm gonna go ahead and create some dummy accounts. So let me go ahead and do this. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to debug, open execute anonymous window. And I'm going to first create some, how should I do that? Async demo account, okay? And then this is the name I will use, where name like. Okay, async demo account. So we're retrieving those, and I'm just creating 10 records. We will remove the limit here. So we will just query those accounts where the name is like this, and we are inserting these accounts. Okay. And then what I'm doing is, after I have inserted the accounts, I am going to call my method, which is the async demo service synchronous method. So if you see here, this is the name of the method, and this is a static method. So here I'm going to go and do this dot of run synchronous demo. So carefully look at the logs. Okay. So as you can see, we have total of 52 records. You have it, 52 records. These are the name. Now, once I execute this piece of code, then you will check the log. So if you go here, only single log will be generated. Okay, there is not a second log or another log. And if you go to the debug only, everything is happening from start to finish. First, 10 records have been inserted. Then you have a debug statement, sync start. Then number of accounts fetched is 20 and sync has ended. Okay. Now, if I go here and you will see, first of all, it will be 62 records and you will see this, all these accounts that you added now have this text. Not this one. What was the text we were adding? Okay, these are the ones. Async demo account 1, async demo account 2, and then you can see here, I believe these are the ones, the last ones. These are the ones that we just created. Let me add created date as well. I believe this org had other accounts prior to that's why. So if you go here, okay, all of them are 12/9, which is today, and these are the ones that you have. Okay, so these are all the accounts, and then you see the job was done, but it happened it happened synchronously, means one log and everything was done. There was no background jobs. Now, if you wanted to run the same thing asynchronously, how will you do that? So one of the way is you will go ahead and implement this interface called Queueable. Okay. When you implement something like Queueable, then automatically Apex knows to run this class in asynchronous mode. And when you implement the queueable, you have to provide the definition of a method, which is called as execute method. So remember, interface is all method signature, no body. So queueable has a method inside called execute. That is the execute method you have to define. So let me go ahead and copy this and then we will understand what this code is doing. So you have another Apex class. Now I'm running the code asynchronously. I showed you how to run the code synchronously. Now I'm showing you how to run the code asynchronously. Okay. So I'm going to go here, file new, Apex class. This is the account processing job 1. And this one will implement the queueable interface. So here I'm going to copy this, implements queueable. And moment you say implements queueable, you will get an error. So if you go here, you will see, moment you said, and you try to save it, you will see problems will appear. And it is saying class must implement the method system.queueable.execute system.of. So this is the signature of the method that this particular class needs to implement. Okay. So this is the job that the job that you are going to queue. This is the work that job will do. Okay. So here I'm going to go ahead and define these two things. So inside of this, what am I doing here? So inside of this, you have the execute method. So when you are creating an object of this class and you enqueue the job, automatically this execute method is the one that will get executed. Okay. So inside of this execute method, you have two debug statement, and this will also spin another log. Okay. So if you look at the log file, you will realize that it is going to have multiple logs created, at least two log. One is the main transaction and then the background process. Now here it is saying I do have an extra something. So this is extra. And then inside of this, I am retrieving the same account, and let's say we put the same name like query. So then we will where name like this, and this is your limit. And here is another debug statement. And then we are going over the accounts.size. So whatever accounts we have with this name, we are doing querying over, and we are adding this text called processed async. Okay, similar thing that we are doing. And then once we have updated it, we do have a DML update statement which will update those records. Now scroll down. This is the one where you are calling this queuing this job. This is what you have to do. You're creating the object of this class, and system.of_enqueue is you have queued the job. So whenever the resources are available, this job will get executed. And what will the job do? Whatever you have written inside of the execute method, that is what it will do. Okay. Any questions on this particular piece of code?
Okay, can you explain it again?
So see, whenever you are implementing a queuable interface, there is a method that you need to provide the definition for, because Queueable has this method called execute. So you have to provide the definition of execute. Now, what goes in execute method? Basically, what that job needs to do. So whatever you want the job to run in the background, you will define all of that job into this execute method. So what this job is going to do, it is going to query account records where the name is like async demo, and we will update the name of those account, and we will add this text called processed async. Okay, that is all we are doing in this job. And then here you have another method called run asynchronous demo. Inside of this, you are calling the debug statement, and then this is the statement to queue the job. So system.of_enqueue job, and basically the object of the class. So new of account processing job one, actually, not job one. So we are creating an object of this class, and we are passing the object to this system.of_enqueue job. Now, what does this system.of_enqueue job does? Let's look at the definition. Okay, so system.of_enqueue job basically queues the job. Okay, so if you go here, the queuable apex, to take control of your asynchronous apex processes by using the queuable interface. This interface enables you to add jobs to the queue and monitor them. Using this interface is an enhanced way of running your apex code compared to using future method. So it is a better way. And then here, you are okay. This is how to add this class as a job on the queue. This is what we will do. So system.of_enqueue job. When you call the system.of_enqueue job, Salesforce add the process to the queue. So basically, this is the object of the class, and this class will always have an execute method, and that is the job that will run in the background. Actual execution can be delayed based on the service availability, but your job has been queued. Okay. Any questions now? System.enqueue, you have to write this when you're using Queueable to queue the job.
And we pass them
The instance of the main class, which is
instead main
implementing
class.
the
Yes.
interface.
Okay.
So you created the object of this class. Okay. This class has an execute method. That execute method is basically updating the account records and adding this processed async, or you can add whatever you want. I'm just adding this text called processed async at the end of the name. And here you can see this is how you queue the job. And if you want to know what is the job ID, you can get the job ID. And then we are just displaying the job ID. Okay. So now if I need to run this, what do I need to do? I just need to call the account processing job one. So I'm not gonna insert again. So account processing job one is the name of the class, and I need to run the run asynchronous method. So this is the name of the method. And now if you go to the logs, I'm going to clear the log panel. So file, debug, clear the log panel. So no logs are there. Everything is saved. And now if you execute it, you will see that this is your main log, the first one, and then here another log got created for queueable handler. So whatever that execute method, that is what is happening inside of this queueable handler. Okay, so if you go to the account processing job one, inside of this you had this async queueable start. That is what it is printing, async queueable start. Then it is the async job ID, so it gave you the job ID as well. And then number of records fetched, you have another debug statement and all of that. Now, if you go to the developer console, if you go to the data export, you will see that those records that you just updated, now they have processed async at the end as well. Okay, so now they have the processed async as well got added. So, but it got added, the same work was done. One was done synchronously, another one was done asynchronously. And if you want to see the job that we just created and how was the job good or was an error in the job, you can take a look at by going over to the Apex jobs. So here you search for Apex jobs, and here you can figure out the jobs that we just triggered. So you see here, this is the queueable job, account processing job one, and it told you that it has completed, and this is the job ID. Okay, and if there was any error, it will update the status. Okay, any questions, guys?
Yeah, Deepika. So these queues are provided by Salesforce, right?
Yes,
And
Queueable is provided by Salesforce, correct?
okay, so internally they will be using some queues anyway. So are there any limits on a daily basis or governally means how many, what is the size of a queue or something like that?
So here you can see there is a limit. You can only use 0 asynchronous Apex operations out of allowed 24-hour limit of this is the limit. So you can have these many jobs in 24 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And um, and it will basically tell you if that job was finished or all of that can be happen through here. So anything with asynchronous, you come over to Apex jobs. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, so the next one we have is so this is one we did. Now the next one is, as I mentioned, the different types of asynchronous Apex. So one is the future method. So it is a fire and forget background jobs used a lot for callouts and small async tasks. So if you have a smaller asynchronous job that you want to execute, or you want to make a call to another system, sorry, then you will use is the future method. It is an older pattern, still very common, but queueable is preferred for new kind of things. So if you have to implement it, you can use queueable. Now, when you are implementing queueable Apex, you have to implement this interface called queueable, and then you have to provide the definition of the execute method. More powerful replacement for many future use cases, allows complex type as parameters and job chaining. So this is very, very important. When you have to queue a job after the other, you will use queueable. You cannot chain jobs inside of a future method, and you can pass complex type like list of accounts, list of opportunities, list of list, all those as a parameters in the case of queueable, which you cannot do in the case of future method. Then batch apex. Okay, so batch apex, when you have to process large volumes of data, when you have to update or delete or any of those operations you have to do, but you have to do it on large volumes of data. So that is when you will implement this particular interface. So this is also an interface. When you implement something database.batchable, that means inside of this interface, which is the batchable interface, it has three methods. Okay, One is the start method, one is the execute method, and the third one is the finish method. Okay, start method and finish method run only one time, whereas execute method will run for each batch job. Okay, so once we will come to the batch apex, I'll tell you what's going on, but understand that in the case of batch apex, you have to implement this interface called database.batchable. And when you implement this interface, then you have to provide the definitions of all these three methods: start, execute, and finish. Okay, now let's do another question here on the future. So I have this method called a class called async email service, and we will have a future method in which will send an email. I'm not sure I will get the email because last time I did got an issue, but let's see. So here I'm going to close all this, file, new apex class, async email service. And inside of this, this is how you use a future annotation. So here, very simple, okay. So here I have this async email service 1 is the name. And inside of this, I have a method called sending a welcome email. And um, I have annotated that method with the future annotation. So what does that mean? That means that I basically is going to run this method in the asynchronous mode. This method will run in the asynchronous mode. And what I'm doing, I'm querying the contact record, and based on the ID of the contact, now ID is coming to this send welcome email. So from outside, I am passing the ID of the contact, and based on that contact ID, it is fetching the ID, first name, and the email of that contact. And then just like we have a boilerplate code to do the what you call REST call out, similarly we have boilerplate code that you have to remember when you have to send an email. So you will create an instance of single email message class. Then you will set the to address, who you want to send the email to, the subject of the email, the body text, all of that you will set it up. And then this is the method send email, which will actually trigger the email to that individual. Okay. So it is basically going to send the email to the contact you are passing to the send welcome email method. And then here you have a future email demo method. And over here, I'm going to go ahead and provide a better Khanna Deepika 91 at gmail.com. Okay. So it is going to create a new contact, and then we are inserting that contact here. And then I am calling the welcome email method, and I'm passing the ID of the contact that I just created. Okay, so future method send welcome email has been queued. So you can see here demo contact dot of ID is something that I'm passing over to this method, the send welcome email. So the email will be sent to my email address because this is the email it will use. Now, what will I do? How simple. I'm going to go ahead and call this thing debug, open execute window. The name is async email service 1. So now it is supposed to send an email. Before that, I'm going to clear all the log panel. You will see a future background process to be created. So now if I execute this, you will see in the logs, you will see a main log, and then you will see a future handler. And if you open the logs of the future handler, it basically has the start debug statement and end debug statement. And let's see if I got a email into my Gmail. So okay, I did get the email. It says, you see here, uh, welcome to the program. Okay, Hi, Asyncs, thanks for joining our program. And if you see, this is exactly what my body of the email should look like. So you can say, hi, the first name is Async Demo. Thanks for joining our program. Okay. And then the subject is welcome to the program. And that is exactly the subject of the email as well. Welcome to the program. So the email came successfully. And you see that there was another job that got triggered behind the scene, which is your future method. Any questions on this code? Now we have also seen how to trigger an email from Apex.
So the method we are using is single email message.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And here you can pass in a list of emails as well. So this is a class, single email message. Methods, these are the set to address is the method. Set subject, plain text body, all of that. And then this is the method which actually sends the email.
Gotcha. And mostly we use Flow for that part, but it was very interesting me that I didn't know
But
we can do it in
but
Apex.
sometimes
Yeah, it's very
you
interesting.
will you also sometimes have to send an email via the Apex as well. So you should know how to do that.
Right. Right. I believe the answer is no, but is there any way that we can track the emails or the emails that's opened within Apex? Is there any way to do that?
No, if you want to see if the person opened the email,
Yeah,
no.
I think it's possible. Is it?
Gmail doesn't have that option. How can you expect Salesforce to have
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wish,
right.
wish. Yeah, no, 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 it's not there. But
Yeah, also,
that's a good feature.
Yeah,
yeah,
that feature is there in Marketing Cloud. If we send it through
Yeah.
Marketing Cloud.
No, I know part of that does have it, but I was wondering if we can do it with
Those
Apex.
are marketing, those are those what do you call tools that only tells you opens, but will it tell you, yeah, it tells you how many people opened that and this person opened your email, all of that.
Yeah, and clicks, opens,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
clicks.
yeah. Any email marketing software will do that.
Yeah.
yeah, Deepika. So you mentioned the chaining is not allowed, right here. So what means? So what are the
So
operations?
chaining means if you have from this future method, you can't call another future method.
Okay.
Okay. Whereas in Queueable, you can call one Queueable job from another Queueable job.
Got it.
Okay. So that chaining is not allowed because you cannot call another future from a future.
Okay.
Now the next one we will do is a future method to make a call out. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the call out that I am going to do is to this endpoint, HTTPS post. This is another API call out. So here, if I go to Postman, now I'm expecting everybody to have Postman. And basically, this is the uh, endpoint, which just gives you back the header information and all that. So but this time we are using a post method. So far, the examples I showed you were for a get method. Now we are making a post call. So inside of this, you can see this is the body. In the body, I am passing name, email, and age. Okay. And I'm doing a post method, and this is my endpoint, and that is it. Now, when you hit send, you will see the response. And this is okay. Oh, Jesus. Oh my God, this service is unavailable. Am I using the right one? It was working. So here I'm going to remove the quote. Oh my God. That's what I was not expecting this. So it's an internal server error. Even this page is taking a while to load. If this doesn't work, guys, I'm going to show you another example probably tomorrow for this one, if this API doesn't work. Okay. Yeah, it is also giving you the padding to disable and crop family error. Yeah, so this is also not working. So here, okay, that's fine. But does anybody else have a method that we can, endpoint that we can call? Anybody else? Or I have to figure out another way?
There is a fake fake REST API dot Azure dot something of that sort. Can you search that, Divya?
Fake REST API?
Dot Azure AZURE.
All right, here. Oh, let me see if I have to convert it into the proper, use the execute. Try it out. Okay. So this one is successful. So here, what is the, but what is the front part of the URL?
I don't know. After yesterday's class, I just tried one or two from here.
That's fine, guys. I'll find out something for tomorrow, and then we will do the batch epics tomorrow, as well as the this one tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know the front part of the URL.
Front part of the URL is the website, fake REST API Azure website.net.
This whole thing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. Was it HTTP or was it HTTPS?
HTTPS.
Yeah, HTTPS. And then here, let's do this. Okay. So it gave you this, and then okay, that's fine. I'll take another look at it tomorrow and get a post method call from the future method. But if I want to show you the code, let's look at what the code is doing. So basically, unfortunately, the thing is not working. But let me see, external callout service and file new Apex class, external callout service. And over here, this is your future callout. And okay. So what we are doing here is we are making a call out, and we are first creating, because this is a post call, so we are putting the name and the email. So whatever you are passing in the name and whatever you're passing in the email, that is what we will be using in our post body. Okay, so here we are creating a map of string comma object. You can create a basically we need a JSON, right? So JSON is nothing but key value. So we are creating a map here, and then we will serializing it to this map to convert into a JSON. Okay, so we are setting up our request body, and then into the request body, we are passing the, sorry, this is where we are creating the map, and inside of the map, we are passing name and the email. And then here is your, you are converting it into a string JSON. So your post body is ready. Okay. Then you are creating an HTTP request, and this is the endpoint that we were calling. This is the method that we were specifying as a post method. The header is this. And if you want it to time out after 2 minutes, let's say it is not giving you response, you want to get the timeout error, you don't want you to keep just looking for it. So there is a timeout limit. And then this is the body that we just created over here. That is the body of this message. And then when you say HTTP response dot send, it is actually when the request gets sent, and then you are basically getting the status code and the response back. So all of this is happening inside of the future method. So it is happening asynchronously. And whenever you're doing a call out, you always say out loud that it is call out equals to true. That means this method, we are making a call to an external system. You have to specify that. In the previous case, all we used was a future annotation. Here you're using a future annotation, but you're also specifying that there is a call out being made in the method, and you're setting up call out equals to true. Okay. And then what you're doing is inside of this demo future call, you're basically invoking the method here, passing in these two things, which is the name and the email, and then future call out has been, this is a simple debug statement. So if I go here and let's go back to the, what was this method? No, this was not the one. HTTPS pin, let's see if this works. No, we will take a look at it tomorrow. But so far, did you understood this endpoint that the way we are invoking? It's very similar to what we did earlier. But did you guys understood this future callout method?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Everybody else? I only see a couple of people talking. So you guys, you have to be a little bit more engaged in the call. Either everything is crystal clear or nothing is clear. How will I know?
Deepika, I have a question. For the map, it is string and object. The object means S object.
Yes.
So we don't.
So you can actually, this object is not an S object, but just a object data type. Let's see what is the difference.
Custom object.
No, it's not custom object. Object data type in Apex. Okay, so just to make it like very generic, you can use object, like anything can be put inside of this object. Very generic one. So here we are putting like a it's a string, but anything can be put inside of an S object is a Salesforce object, right? Account or contact or something. Here it is not a account or contact. Here it is more like a string coming up. So instead of using string, they are specified as a they are specified it as an object. So think
Can it be
like
like the object we created with the getter and setter?
which one? Come back.
Last we created an object with the getter and setter inner class.
We
Is it
didn't create an object.
no?
We created
Yeah,
a getter and setter. We created an instance variables. We used it an instance variable to create it.
yeah. Is that anything like that?
No. So
No.
think of this object as like just like you have different data types, right? String can hold string values. ID will hold ID values. Decimal will hold decimal values. So think of object can hold anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is it for today's class, guys. I'm going to see you tomorrow and we will wrap this up tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night,
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you.